Okay, I think we got everybody. If not, just make sure you post in the chat, and then we'll make sure to get you permission. Otherwise, we'll just let Keith go ahead. Thank you, Keith.
All right, good morning, everybody. Excuse me, good afternoon. Day's moving pretty fast. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm Keith Reed, Deputy Commissioner for the Oklahoma State Department of Health. I'm going to start today with an update on vaccines administered. As of midnight last night, a total of 243,807 vaccines have been administered per our immunization registry. Of those, 31,087 were second doses, meaning those individuals have completed their vaccination series. 212,720 people have received the single dose to date. All right, now moving on to an update of the vaccine scheduler portal. As of noon today, 505,063 Oklahomans have registered through the portal to receive notifications on eligibility. Of these, 285,695 are eligible within a phase 2 eligibility priority group to receive the vaccine, which includes healthcare workers, first responders, and Oklahoma's 65 plus. 14,158 Oklahomans are eligible as virtue of being in phase 1. 63,241 appointments have been scheduled by Oklahomans that are eligible to receive the vaccine, and 1,980 appointments are currently available. As a reminder, though, that was a snapshot in time, and certainly there are no guarantees that those appointments are still available. Right now, the priority groups that are eligible for vaccine appointments as part of phase 2 of the vaccine plan include healthcare workers, expanded healthcare worker groups such as allied health fields and general outpatient health services, first responders, and Oklahomans age 65 plus. So we're pleased that 500,000 Oklahomans have successfully registered on the portal in just a few short weeks, and over 63,000 vaccine appointments have been scheduled. But as a reminder, the vaccine scheduler portal is just one piece of our public health response plan to administer the vaccine. This is not the only plan moving forward to provide access to vaccine appointments. We are partnering with hundreds of pandemic providers across the state to ensure the vaccine reaches as many Oklahomans as possible. Our current limitation on this part of the plan to engage these partners remains vaccine supply and availability. Please know that if you're having trouble scheduling an appointment, there will be additional opportunities to do so on the portal. More appointments are added weekly. Or as we are able to send vaccine to pandemic providers across the state, more opportunities will become evident through that process as well. As of right now, Oklahoma's vaccine supply from Operation Warp Speed is expected to remain relatively unchanged. As we transition into working with the Biden administration this week, OSDH will continue to be flexible with our vaccine distribution plan. For this week, we are in the process of receiving 81,125 doses of vaccine. Next week, we're expecting to receive 86,875 doses. But please note, with a change in Operation Warp Speed procedures to stop holding back second doses, this inventory includes vaccine for both first and second doses and does not indicate a significant increase in the prime dose vaccine that we've been reporting in previous weeks. On a related note, as we move through the plan, many people are scheduling their second dose of the vaccine. OSDH realizes that there are many individual circumstances that contribute to one's experience in scheduling the second dose. But here's some basic information I want to share about signing up for that second dose. First, it's recommended that you should get your second dose 21 or 28 days after your first dose of the vaccine. That depends on which type of vaccine you get. However, it can be longer if needed, and that timeline does have some flexibility in it. You do not need to schedule your second dose appointment on exactly the 21st day or 28th day. It can be given after day 21 or day 28. So please do not be concerned if you're not able to schedule on exactly that day that aligns with day 21 or day 28. You are able to use the portal to schedule your second dose appointment. As you go through the registration process, the portal will prompt you to answer if the appointment is for your second dose or not. If you're seeking your second dose, the portal will ask what type of vaccine you already received, either Pfizer or Moderna. This is how your scheduled site will know what type of vaccine you need for your second dose. It is preferred that you get your second shot at the same location you get your first. This is due to the logistical challenges required to manage second dose clinics and plan for adequate and appropriate inventory. However, it is not an absolute requirement. It is preferred because it makes it much more reasonable for us to manage the logistical challenges that go with second dose clinics. Additionally, it is not required to schedule your second appointment through the portal. If you receive specific second dose instructions from the site where you received your first dose, please follow those instructions. The portal is intended to be another option for Oklahomans to schedule their COVID-19 vaccine. We recognize there are many individual circumstances and that some may prefer to access the vaccine via a pandemic provider or other local healthcare provider when it is made available to those partners. Finally, I want to talk about how OSDH is ensuring minority communities and people of color can access the vaccine and feel safe doing so. We are providing constant, transparent updates on the vaccine and how it works to ensure Oklahomans of color feel comfortable making an informed decision on the COVID-19 vaccine. And we're working with local community leaders to ensure communications to minority groups are clear and compassionate. Those who know the history of vaccine testing in our country know that our communities of color and indigenous communities can sometimes feel weary of vaccines. We're going to make every effort to ensure equitable distribution of the vaccine. For those registering in the portal, you will notice we ask for information on race. This is to help us better understand how we are reaching all populations. I encourage everyone to please complete these questions to help us gauge our success. These are not required to be answered in order to register successfully, but again, it helps inform our decisions and it helps to inform our plans moving forward so we can provide a good, equitable access to vaccines. As our teams work to ensure equity in the rollout, I'll provide more updates on these particular efforts. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up to Q&A.
Okay, Adam Snyder, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Deputy Commissioner Adam Snyder with KFOR TV. I have a quick two-part question. The first part is, we have reports of some folks getting calls from fraudsters asking for personal information or money in exchange for access to the vaccine. Do you want to comment on the fact that the state will not be calling folks?
Absolutely. Under no circumstances are we going to be calling individuals to try to ask for personal information in exchange for money. Having said that, I want to be clear. We have set up the opportunity for those that struggle with technology that they can call 211, and in doing so may end up on a list with their name and phone number that will then be transferred over to a local health department. That local health department may call to get their basic information, but specifically for an appointment itself. Those individuals should know that they called 211 and they put their names on that list. But under no circumstances are we engaged in any activity where we would call and ask for personal information in order to try to give somebody a vaccine for money or anything like that. And please be wary of anybody that does that.
Thank you. And my follow-up question would be, these folks aren't necessarily posing as the state, they're posing as third-party vendors. Is it through the state and through the state portal? Is that the only way that Oklahomans receive this vaccine?
No, that is not the only way they can receive the vaccine. So again, we are working to add our pandemic providers to our list, which requires us to have adequate vaccine supply. When we do that, there will be plenty of other opportunities to get an appointment and get vaccinated. But I do not foresee any circumstances at this point where somebody should actively be reaching out to Oklahomans to say, hey, I've got a vaccine for you. In exchange for some information and money, I can vaccinate you. That should not happen. All of our pandemic providers will be through legitimate healthcare systems, and we will have those posted on our websites as well for verification.
Great, thank you.
Barbara with the Tulsa World.
Hi, Deputy Commissioner. Thanks again for making yourself available for this. I had a question from a reader. He went through the portal system. He's 64. He's got comorbidities, and he was approved and twice confirmed for his appointment, which was in Hugo. And again, he said that the appointment was confirmed, and he got down there and they told him his subsection was not open yet. And so he had to turn right around and drive back. Has that happened a lot, or has he made an error, or what can you speak to that issue?
I am not aware of that happening in any frequency whatsoever. I would be interested in getting some information from you offline so we could connect, because we can go back in and look into our system and see what happened, which provides us a learning opportunity if there are glitches in our system. But with the description, if he was under 65, he would not be eligible. So I would like to look into the system and see what happened there. Again, another learning opportunity for us if there is a glitch. If not, if it is a user issue, user error, then that's an opportunity for us to provide more communication to help the public understand how to complete the registration.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Barbara, you can go ahead and send that information to me and I'll get it to Keith. Thank you. Next up, Russell Mills.
There we go. I'll bet I'm unmuted now. Yes?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity, Deputy Commissioner. Always appreciate your forthrightness. So I'm going to kind of follow up on Barbara's question. I had a question from a listener who says, my husband and I fit the under 65, but with comorbidities or underlying health issues to get a shot in phase 2. I've not received a second email to make the appointment, and am wondering if it will be after everybody over 65 gets theirs. I guess the question is it tiered, so we're getting the older folks first and then those with health conditions, or is it a mixture? Because it sounds like the gentleman that Barbara was talking about did have comorbidities, even though he was 64.
So right now, the eligible groups are 65 plus. We have not opened it up to those under 65 that have comorbidities. Those are our next group that we will be bringing online. We just need to get a little further into our 65 plus population. I don't want to create a situation where 65 plus is competing with an even larger group to try to get their vaccine. So we're trying to do this at a reasonable pace. We will not wait until we feel like we have completed everyone in 65 plus. We just need to get far enough along that we provided good opportunity for those that we feel like are interested in getting vaccinated, want to get vaccinated, that they have a good opportunity to get those appointments. And then we'll overlay those under 65 with comorbidities as the next group onto it. I wish I could tell you when that would happen, but it's another example of vaccine supply is driving that. If we had a large bolus of vaccine coming into the state, had good supply that we knew that we could have a lot of appointments and a lot of pandemic providers engaged, we would be doing that very soon. If they're going to continue to give us these kind of minimal amounts each week, then that extends that timeline out. So it's really dependent on the vaccine supply.
Okay, quick follow-up. We have a new presidential administration coming in tomorrow. Does that mean that things could change, I don't know, Wednesday? Or do we expect things to kind of go as they are for a while and sort of have a transitional phase? Or do you have any clue? Because I know you don't always find out about things until like the last.
Right. Well, quite frankly, at the dawn of a new day, I expect change. That's just kind of been the one constant throughout this is there's new information every day. We're constantly adapting to that change. And that's frustrating for us. I know it's frustrating for the public as well, because everybody wants to know what to expect from day to day. But I think the best way that we can serve Oklahomans is to remain flexible, remain agile, be prepared for change and ready for change. So do we expect change with the new administration? Yes, we do. Do I know what it is? No, I don't know what that change is going to be. So when we find out, we'll do our best to communicate with you as quickly as possible. We're trying very hard just to be as transparent and open as possible with everything that's happening. It's the reason we've been setting these Q&As up with you so we can keep you informed pretty much as quickly as we know and as quickly as we learn new information. But so we'll continue to do that, and we'll see what tomorrow holds or the next day. We'll adapt from there.
Fair enough, sir. Thank you very much.
You bet.
All right, Janelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is from a reader about second booster clinics. Do you have to go to a designated second booster clinic to get your second vaccine, or can you register for anyone?
Okay, what we want you to do is to go to the clinic, the same site you received your first dose. And they are setting up booster clinics. And so that's what we want you to do. That's what we need you to do. Is it an absolute mandatory requirement? Is there a medical reason for you to do that? No, there's not. This is where I'm going to ask from the public is some patience and understanding of how challenging this is logistically when we talk about booster doses and second doses. As we mentioned last week, OWS, they changed their policy and they're no longer holding back that second dose for us. So now we're in a situation to manage second doses moving forward. What we really can't do is leave those in the freezer and wait 3 weeks, wait 4 weeks. So we have another option. Our option is to use an appointment system that is tied to second doses in order to understand how many people are coming due and how we can use our current inventory as it comes in each week, how we can direct it. So what you might expect moving forward is some weeks we are very heavy on providing boost doses for the public because we have many coming due. And if we didn't get a large increase in our doses, we'll focus pretty heavily on those boost doses. That is to ensure that we continue our commitment to the public to get them those second doses that they need. Other weeks, it may be heavily on prime doses. So we're going to get into kind of a pattern here among our clinics of some weeks heavier with prime, some weeks heavier with boost. The big issue there, the underlying theme is that we've still got to continue to move vaccine from freezer to individuals, either to get them their first dose where they have some protection or that second dose where they get to that 95%, and then we can move on to the next groups.
Awesome. And my other question is, today, Oklahoma City Public Schools sent staff a letter noting that they're targeting a February 12th start date for vaccinations of teachers and staff. Obviously, there's a push to get students back in the classroom. When do you expect teachers to begin getting access? And will your county health departments work to set up mass vaccination sites at school locations to avoid disrupting school days?
So, as far as when we expect that to happen, for 65 and older, they're eligible right now. And we are working with schools on helping to get the message out to those individuals that they can get vaccinated through their eligibility now. The next group, under 65 with comorbidities, I assume there will be a significant number of teachers that will also fall into that category and be eligible. For predicting a date of when we will be open to teachers at large, as far as that category, it's way too premature for me to be able to estimate that, because again, and I know you get tired of me hearing this or me saying this, but it's about vaccine inventory. I just don't know when we'll have enough vaccine inventory that we'll be able to move to those groups. So we're not there yet. I am not prepared to make a prediction on when that's going to happen. I would hope that it would be sooner rather than later, but still too much is still in question. As far as working with the schools to get vaccinated to try not to disrupt their classrooms, we certainly want to do that, but we have to be very mindful of the resources we use. As I mentioned before, for our resources that are going into these pods out across the state, it's important that we make good use of those resources and we have high throughput and we process as many people as possible, as efficiently as possible. For me to kind of break down that group and divide them up into doing a lot of strike teams, that becomes somewhat inefficient for us. We can't process as many people, but we are looking at other resources that we can engage and we can partner with that can help go into the schools. Or we've also had discussions with the schools about maybe setting up some special pods to where they can come to a central point. to get vaccinated. But we'll continue to be flexible and work with the schools on this. It's a challenge, though, just like anything else with COVID moving forward.
All right, Cassandra with Channel 4.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. The first, last week at a Ponca City school board meeting, someone in the school board was saying that they have some employees who qualify for the vaccine, can't get appointments, but that because there are often these extra doses of vaccine that need to be disseminated immediately because they've been thawed, that I guess the health department there would put some of their 65 and older people on a priority standby list. And I'm wondering, is this priority standby list a thing? And is it only open to, I mean, who is it open to? And how do people access that?
So we have, each county health department does have a list of individuals that are in the eligible criteria right now that they are reaching out to call for special appointments. So I remind you about the 211 that we set up to where people would call 211. They would get referred to a health department group embedded with 211. If they weren't able to assist somebody walking through and get registered in a portal, then they would, and because maybe they didn't have the right technology, they would take their name and numbers and we would distribute that out to the county health departments. And then they use those numbers to call and fill in some appointments that they have set aside for them. I was at a pod yesterday, for example, that the entire morning of the pod was dedicated to helping those individuals get their appointments, and they were coming in based off of their communication with 211. As far as some eligible individuals at a local county health department that may have their name on the list, if there's something like that come up, I can't speak to that specifically. I don't know about the Ponca City Health or Ponca City County. Don't know about that particular health department, what their system is right now. I could check with them and see, but what I don't want to do is create a situation where we have people all over the state trying to call in to get on a special list to get called if their appointments are available. As far as a widespread, is that a program? Is that a process? Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, we have heard from a lot of elderly couples who are trying to get vaccinated together. Obviously, it would be easier for them, but they can't schedule it together. And I'm wondering if the health department is working on any sort of plan to make it available so that, you know, one person doesn't have to go to Enid and another person is going to Moore or something. And, you know, these elderly people can do this as a unit.
Yeah, no, that's a real challenge right now that we are aware of, and we're working on that. As we find out about those circumstances, we're trying to make accommodations for them to get their appointments together. But from the system perspective, we're still working on trying to figure out how to get that particular one taken care of. But we're very aware of that. We've got it with our team to talk about and try to figure out the best way to crack that one and to make sure that they can get their appointments together, because we don't want them traveling to two different areas either.
Thank you.
All right, Tevis with News 9.
Commissioner Reed, thanks for talking about the vaccine and the vaccine plan. I was just wondering if you could just briefly touch on the Pandemic Center and what this will do for Oklahomans.
So it's pretty quiet there. Were you asking about the Pandemic Center for Innovation and Excellence?
Yes, and also my questions in the chat.
Okay. Anthony, can you read that question, because I could barely hear her?
Yeah, it is regarding the Pandemic Center and what that will do for Oklahoma. Keith, I'm not sure, are you prepared to talk about that, or?
Yeah, no, I'm not really here to talk about that. I think we do have a media event maybe later in the week to have some discussion about that. And I would probably want to refer to that group to have that discussion. I think anytime we're looking at really bringing resources into the state that can help us be better prepared for a pandemic in the future, I think that's a positive thing for Oklahoma. But as far as for the details of that, I would refer to the other media event later in the week.
Yeah, Tevis, let me get with you. There is something else, and then let me see if I can get you something either for that or in addition to that. So I'll follow up with you after that, if that's okay. Any other questions from you? Otherwise, we'll move on. we'll just move on to Dylan.
And thank you again for doing these. They're so helpful. I had a viewer reach out to me and say she had scheduled an appointment out in Blaine County in Canton. I guess they're still using Sign Up Genius out there. And they sent her an email saying, we ended up not getting as many doses as we expected, so we had to cancel a bunch of appointments. Have you heard about that happening in rural areas of county health departments having to cancel appointments that they made? Have you heard about that?
No, I have not heard about that. I would be interested in getting some of that information offline from you so I could look into it. But no, I'm not aware of that. And as far as using Sign Up Genius, the only thing that I could think of possibly was if it was something that had been used and set up from before we had the portal up and they had it planned for a second dose clinic. That's where I was talking earlier about there may be some special instructions if you go to your first dose clinic about the second dose, but I'll be glad to look at that if you wouldn't mind getting with me offline.
I just want to make sure it wasn't a widespread issue you were
No,
hearing about.
should not be a widespread issue for certain.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Okay, Brent with Channel 4.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, very good. About supply, I've seen numerous tweets, numerous comments made that Oklahoma could be administering many more doses than they are currently, that it's all about supply. Can you kind of give me an idea if that's true and the numbers that we were talking about?
Yeah, so the big thing right now is if we had more supply, we could engage pandemic providers around the state. So one of the tools in the toolbox, if you will, is the pandemic providers such as retail pharmacies that are out there, primary care providers, urgent care centers. Those are all groups that have signed up with the state to be a pandemic provider. They raised their hand and said, we're willing to give out vaccine, but we've got to have sufficient supply coming into the state to get it to them so that they can provide it. And we need to do so in such a way that it's additive to what we're currently doing. In other words, we got to keep the pace we're going now, and then we need to add those on top of it. That's a vaccine supply issue. If we have the supply, it's easy enough to redirect it to those individuals so that they are able to start adding on to the people that we can vaccinate in the state. So yeah, we could definitely do that if we have more supply.
Follow up to that, do you anticipate it changing as we get into the new administration? And also, when are we going to get the approval for the newer vaccines that will ultimately help you guys, because the care needed for them will not be as great?
Right. So let me answer the first question, which is, do we expect it to change, get more with the new administration? If the information that we've received is accurate so far from Operation Warp Speed, what we're getting is based off of what is being produced. If that's the case, unless they do indeed start adjusting their allocations to state based off of burn rate, in other words, the rate at which we are moving vaccine from freezer to arms, if they will make allocation adjustments based off of that, I would anticipate we would get more vaccine. If it's going to remain a population-based allocation like they have been using, I don't necessarily anticipate we're going to immediately see a large increase in the supply. But again, there's a lot that goes on at the federal level leading up to us getting notified of our allocations that we don't have eyes on, and we're not very aware. Reminder, as of last week, we were under the impression that 50% of our doses were physically being stockpiled in preparation for the need for second doses, and that was what was being released to us. That was not the case. So again, we're frustrated waiting on that information to really know what's ahead of us. We need that visibility because that's how we plan ahead. That's how we know when we can engage these providers. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating not knowing that. You had a second question, I think?
Yeah. What do we have a timetable for the new other vaccinations that aren't as labor intensive, care intensive?
Right. And one of the big ones I think you mentioned is Johnson & Johnson is said to be coming out with a vaccine that is a single dose. And I cannot even express how much I would love to have a single dose vaccine right now for us logistically and for Oklahomans as well. We don't yet know when that's coming. We're hearing word that possibly they'll be reaching out for emergency use authorization in February, but I've just heard that through secondary sources, and I've seen nothing firm as far as dates on the calendar yet. And then the other one is AstraZeneca, I think is the other one that's out there. Still don't know exactly when that one's going to come on board. They had shifted and adjusted some of their studies, their phase 3 studies, which had delayed them somewhat. Still waiting on that information to come through.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Tyler with KTUL.
Thank you very much for the availability. We've got two quick questions. First of which you already touched on just a smidge there. When we talk about allocation here, Colorado with this stockpile, our neighbors in Colorado were expecting 210,000 vaccines this week. They now, because this stockpile doesn't exist, are getting 79,000. So what has that done to us here in Oklahoma?
Yeah, that's probably pretty consistent with what we've seen. As I mentioned, this week we received 81,125 doses. That's really just our kind of regular allotment that we've been getting over the last 3 or 4 weeks of around between 40 and 50,000 doses times 2. So it's that amount plus your booster doses that they said that they were holding back. Had we gone back and done the math for what we were expecting we would have received last week, it probably would have been the 200,000 plus range as well, based off of what we were under the impression was being held back. Didn't happen. We don't have that vaccine coming. So right now what we are getting is vaccine inventory. And we're trying to talk about it more from a vaccine inventory standpoint instead of trying to manage it as prime and boost doses. So 86,000 is probably what we've got coming next week, if I remember the number that I mentioned early on about that 86,000. Keep in mind that includes vaccine that is kind of earmarked for prime and for boost doses. Now, we are not going to sit on those boost doses and hold it for 3 and 4 weeks to give it out. I want to be clear on that, and I think there's some concern among the public. So I want to make sure and address this as clearly as I can. We're not going to sit on that vaccine and hold it, but that does not mean we're not prioritizing boost doses for Oklahomans. If I get 86,000 this week, we're going to, that needs to go to boost will go to boost, and we will schedule those based on an appointment system. That can go to prime for that initial dose. It'll go to the initial. In 4 weeks, we'll do the same thing with new shipment coming in. That new shipment, we will dedicate what is necessary to boost doses based off of our history of what happened this week. So we're going to work that through appointment scheduling to make sure that we meet Oklahomans' needs to get that second dose. But understand that we're not going to sit on inventory and hold it in a freezer for 3 and 4 weeks, because that vaccine has got to get into the arms of Oklahomans. That's how we're going to interrupt transmission. So we've got to keep it moving, and we got to demonstrate to the federal government that we are able to burn through our vaccine at a rate by which they need to consider us for higher allocations.
Sure. And my second question, sort of in the same vein, do you guys feel like you were misled at all by the White House or the federal government?
The impression that I had and my team had about the how the second doses were being handled did not match with what was actually being done. So yes, we were given the impression, a very clear impression, that second doses were being physically stored. And our understanding now is that that policy or that process changed back in December. We were not told that that changed. So yes, as of last week, what I believed to be happening and what my team believed to be happening indeed was not based on the facts. And those facts were not shared with us before. So you can put it whatever terms you want on that. But yeah, I guess I felt a little bit misled at that point.
Sure. Thank you very much for the availability. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, we'll move to Angelica Brown.
Hi, Keith. I got two questions for you, and I'm going to start off by just kind of snowballing on what Tyler was talking about. In your opinion, do you think that we're on track with this rollout after dealing with everything that happened with the federal government and how we didn't get as many doses, or they didn't have that stockpile that they had clearly mentioned to you guys? Do you think Oklahoma's in a good spot with this rollout? Are we on track? Is it going smoothly in your opinion?
I think we are adapting daily to what we are given by the federal government with the doses we're giving. I think we are moving through vaccine rapidly. I'm in no way satisfied that it's going exactly the way I want it to go. I want it to go as smooth as possible. I want every Oklahoman to have a good experience getting their vaccine. And that doesn't always happen. It's almost impossible to find a single solution that works for everybody. That's the reason we know, such as the scheduling portal, that's not a solution for everybody. It's a solution we put out there that hopefully we could capture for a lot of people and help support them. We're continually adapting, trying to make improvements. So for me to say that I am satisfied that we are where we need to be, no, because our attitude has been, we've got to continue to do better. We got to continue to adapt and adjust and improve. As far as the state level or the federal level, I had hoped at this point that we were going to see a steady escalation of inventory coming into the state, and we have not seen that. So that inhibits our ability to bring on these pandemic providers and these partners. So yeah, I'm frustrated that we aren't able to use all the tools that we kind of set up and we have in the toolbox. We're not able to use those because we don't have the inventory to do so. If we were able to use those, I know we would have a lot more appointments available for Oklahomans, a lot more vaccine available for Oklahomans. And I know that's what they need, that's what they want, and it's what we want too. So I think we are doing good with a difficult situation and continually adapting to it. But in no way are we setting back, again, patting ourselves on the back saying we've got this. We are on our toes every single day, looking to adjust and adapt to the situation we're given so we can continue to serve Oklahomans. There's no complacency here at all.
All right, one more question for you, and I'm kind of backpedaling here, talking about that second shot. We've gotten quite a few questions into our newsroom about people having issues, kind of getting confused. Do they need to go back into the portal to set up their appointment for that second shot? So can I get a little bit of clarity on what someone needs to do after getting that first dose?
Right. First thing I would say is if they receive special instructions at the site of the original clinic, follow those instructions. In other words, if they were given a card and it said, you come back on this date, that is your appointment to come back on that date. Now, if they were not given that and they were told we will need to schedule you around this date, then yes, the portal is a way in which they can go in and they can schedule for that second boost dose. Those clinics within the portal will say booster dose clinics in front of them. They'll be designated for that. I ask Oklahomans to please stick with that. If you're going for your initial dose, your prime dose, please don't try to schedule in a booster dose. Those are specifically for individuals that have already received their first dose. So that's the first thing we'd ask, is for everybody to work with us and kind of follow the structure that we set up in doing so. So that's the one way of getting the booster dose. Now, as we add more pandemic providers, again, based off of that vaccine inventory, there will be other opportunities to get second doses that may be through a primary care physician or a federally qualified healthcare center. But at this point, or a pharmacy, at this point, we don't have enough vaccine to bring those on board. So we want people to really stick with that initial place that they went to get vaccinated.
Thanks for your time, Keith.
All right, Carmen with the Oklahoman.
Hey, Keith. Thank you so much for your time. So quick question. You've talked a bit already on this call about the pandemic providers, and I was wondering, have you been able to start distributing to any pandemic providers yet? And I asked that because I heard a story recently, through the grapevine of basically somebody has their primary care doctor through SSM Health, and the primary care doctor's office called, and he's over 65, and they said, hey, we've got some vaccines. Do you want to come in at 8:30 tomorrow and get a shot? So I was just wondering if you have started with some pandemic providers, or if that was maybe just a fluke and they had some left over.
We have started with some pandemic providers. So hospitals, for example, are pandemic providers. I know we didn't talk about that early on, and we really didn't publicly categorize them as pandemic providers, but that was the system by which we were able to give them vaccines so that they could get started. So many hospital systems continue as pandemic providers right now, and some are even doing public-facing clinics for 65 plus. We have provided vaccine to, I think it was 66 federally qualified healthcare centers around the state. We did that a couple of weeks ago. Those are pandemic providers that we have brought on board to try to help open up some other avenues by which somebody can provide vaccine. We've tried a couple of urgent care centers, for example, to see kind of how that would work. We're in serious conversation now about trying to get vaccine to retail pharmacies, because we see that as a good mechanism by which we can get vaccine to providers that can see a lot of people. So we're working on that as well. So yes, we have started with pandemic providers around the state. We're just not deep enough into this like I want to be. We want to have, we've got over 1,400 signed up. I really want to have 1,400 pandemic providers to have vaccine. I want to put those out there so that those are all access points around the state. And I want to be able to provide them with the vaccine they need to not run out, to continue to be able to offer it to Oklahomans. What a wonderful day that's going to be when we're able to have that level of access to vaccine in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, right now, we're again, not there.
Okay. Keith, I know we're about time. We do have a few more questions in the chat, so I don't know what your schedule looks like, if you want to take a few more. Or if
I could do just a little bit more.
Okay. Chris Lawton, I think you've got your question answered, so we'll move on to Rick with Fox 23.
Thank you. I'll make it fast. Mine are basically follow-ups. I know you were asked about school districts, but when it comes to a district like Oklahoma City doing what they did today, making a date to vaccinate their teachers, you also have Tulsa Public holding their own events. Do districts have special access to the state stockpile to do these things, or are they, from your understanding, getting their vaccine from somewhere else?
So no, they should not have access to vaccine from any other provider. Vaccine comes into the state through a federal allocation, which gets some limited vaccine to our tribal health systems, the Oklahoma City VA as an example. They get a little bit of federal vaccine that comes in that way. Then there's state vaccine that comes through us, and we reallocate it to different areas. Some school systems may be able to work with their local health departments to where they can provide some vaccine for their 65 plus population that's eligible right now. But that is still essentially funneled through the vaccine allocation we get through the state, and then it goes out to the local health departments who can work with these facilities in order to have vaccine available. But typically that's going to be through maybe a contract provider or somebody else that is going in and kind of serving in that function I talked about of maybe providing a strike team or a team focused on a certain group that they can get vaccine to them. There's no special allotment or special vaccine for schools set up right now as far as that goes. And those that will be rolling in later on in phase 2, we don't have a special inventory vaccine set aside for those either. When we will roll them in into our plan as we move through the population, we get to those groups. We'll roll them in at that time. And then we will certainly work with schools to try to get vaccine to them in a number of ways, pandemic providers, maybe it's some, our pods, as I mentioned. It could be through, there are some companies out there that are legitimate companies that go out and do workplace wellness type of efforts. Those are some pandemic providers as well. That may be a means by which they could get vaccinated also.
My second question, just to follow up, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I wanted to be clear. Has anybody from the incoming Biden administration contacted you? Have you received any kind of briefing from a Biden advisor or a Biden representative about how they're planning on moving forward? And that's my last one. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I have not received anything at this point, any kind of briefing at this point on that. No. Now, has there been briefings to Operation Warp Speed and such about the national strategy? I'm sure there has, but nothing has filtered to us at this point.
All right, we'll move on to Ken Miller.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Reed. Brief questions, I think. Are any of the variants, Brazil, UK, any variants in Oklahoma yet that you're aware of?
So we don't have any laboratory confirmed variants identified at this point in Oklahoma. Now, does that mean that they're not here? I would never say that. I'm just saying at this point, we haven't confirmed any through laboratory testing.
Gotcha. On the vaccination schedule, how many Oklahomans are 65 or older that you're hoping to vaccinate? And how many total vaccinations of the 3.9 million Oklahomans?
So our 65 and older population is around 600, little north of 600,000 people in Oklahoma. And I would love, that's a group that is at significant risk from COVID. I would love to see us get that group very heavily vaccinated. We'll never get 100%. That's just, not generally realistic, but I hope we get a significant percentage of that population vaccinated. Oklahomans in general, just as a general rule of thumb, I'm thinking we need to try to get 3/4 of the state vaccinated to say that we have, successfully rolled out this program and made it available to Oklahomans around the state. But there's a lot of factors that come into play for that. For example, 3.9 million Oklahomans, but I haven't done the math. I didn't look at it before I came in, but the vaccine isn't available to those under 16, for example. So that takes a big group off. Otherwise, when I do general math, I'm like, I think we need to get 3 million people vaccinated in Oklahoma. That's just general math. I'm not relating that to herd immunity or anything like that. I'm just trying to get a general sense of what we need to be shooting for figuratively for this program.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Hey, Zach, you're up next. I saw your question has to do with second dose. I know we've talked about that a little bit before. Is your question answered yet?
Right. So what we're seeing with a lot of individuals is they're getting vaccinated, and then they naturally so they want to go out and immediately get that second dose appointment locked down. We haven't been putting those doses in 3 and 4 weeks in advance though, because we're still waiting on vaccine to come in. We are working on getting second dose appointments put into the system further out that will make it easier for somebody to go in and get their second dose appointment further out into the future, which should eliminate a lot of those issues. Because typically what we're finding when we start looking into that is people want to get that second dose, but we haven't scheduled those yet. We haven't scheduled them that far out. We're really only scheduling about a week ahead right now, but we are working on going ahead and projecting out just for second doses. But again, here's my concern. I don't want Oklahomans to go in and take those second dose appointments for their first dose. If they say second dose or, for the booster clinic, that's what they're there for. So we need Oklahomans to really work with us and to make sure that when they go in and get their appointments, they are paying attention to the category that they are seeking an appointment in, and they stay within their particular category for us.
All right, Aaron Conrad.
Hi, Deputy Commissioner. I just have a quick question. It sounds as if people are going to have to wait potentially longer than the 21 to 28 days, depending on which vaccine they get, to possibly schedule or get in for that second dose. Because of the situation that you found out about last week, do you anticipate that there could be some hangups with people getting their second doses and potentially having to wait an extended period of time for that second dose? And how long can someone wait until they get their second dose and the shot still be as effective as it should be within 21 to 28 days?
Right. Well, let me first say that I do not anticipate any significant delays on that second dose. When I was talking earlier about, you don't have to have it on day 21, you don't have to have it on day 28. That is as much about scheduling logistics as it is about vaccine availability. There's a lot of balls in the air, if you will, and we're trying to keep straight when we are managing all these different clinics around the state. So that's the reason sometimes we need to shift to the right a little bit, a day or two here and there, in order to make sure that we've got the venue is secured, that we have the staff available, that all the things kind of come together that are required to pull off these clinics. So please understand, when we talk about the fact that it doesn't have to be on that very day, we're just asking for people to be flexible and understand that it can easily shift one direction or the other based off of logistics, not necessary vaccine supply. So I don't want people to be concerned that they're not going to get their second dose right now. We are prioritizing these second doses based off of vaccine that's coming into the state. Is there the potential that there could be a problem down the road? I'm not saying no to anything right now because we get new information all the time. But as long as we continue with at least this minimum steady cadence of vaccine coming in, I think we're going to be fine on second doses. We're just going to have some periods of time where we may not have very much to go to new doses or the first dose during certain weeks. So the point being is we will use our appointments available in order to meet those requirements.
Thank you.
All right, Keith, two quick questions. Anna, Tulsa Oral, go ahead.
It was another follow-up related to, I just wanted to ask, you said it was 1,400 pandemic providers who have signed up to be pandemic providers. And is there a number that you have in mind that you'd like shipment-wise that would then trigger involving those 1,400 pandemic providers in that you'd be able to supply them? Is there a target number for that yet?
Yeah, so in order to engage all those, it would have to be a very large amount of supply coming into the state. What we're really looking at is more of an incremental, bringing them on board. Again, some of them are already on board, but let's say, for example, to bring on pharmacy providers, we can start bringing some of them on probably in the next couple of weeks is the hope. That's what we're going to try to do, but we're not going to be able to bring them all on. It's going to be limited. And as far as how much vaccine that is going to be to trigger it, it will depend on our throughput. It'll depend on the throughput within our existing partners. We have some partners that are rolling out more pods right now. We got to make sure that we can continue to support them. And then we've also got to take into consideration those second dose allocations or the second dose requirements that'll be coming up on those appointments to make sure that we are reserving vaccine for providers that they can sustain the ones they've already started. It gets complicated. I know that's not a good answer. It's not a numerical answer that you'd probably like to get. It's just there's a lot of factors that are going to go into that for us to know when we can start giving to those other providers.
Sure. Do you think it might be safe to say that by phase 3, you would have a large percentage of your pandemic providers engaged by that time?
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because, again, this goes back to information we've gotten from Operation Warp Speed and CDC. Really, by definition, phase 3 should be a situation where we have more vaccine than we have demand. That was the way CDC defined these phases. And as we move through phase 2, you're looking at the curve going up, which means supply is going up, and we're starting to catch up with the demand as we get towards middle and the end of phase 2. So yes, I would say that as we get into phase 3, we should have sufficient vaccine that we can engage all those providers. That's kind of been the overall design all along.
Thanks so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Cassandra, do you still have a follow-up?
Yes, if that's all right. I know you've answered this before, but I'm addressing it in my story because it's a question we keep getting. If you have gotten the vaccine or if you have had the virus already, are you still recommending that people who fit in these categories right now vie for spots to get the vaccine?
We're asking that they wait 90 days from the time of their COVID infection. We're asking them to wait 90 days. The reason for that is that way, 90 days is seemed to be pretty straightforward on some natural immunity. We've seen some reinfection after 90 days, but during that time period, individuals have some natural immunity based off of their previous infection. We would ask for them to leave those appointments for Oklahomans that maybe are past that 90 days or have not yet been infected. Let them get those appointments and give us a little bit more time for that individual to wait before they take up on those appointments.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Keith.
You bet. Y'all have a great day. Talk to you again soon.
All right. See ya.